Let's talk about copy machines for a minute. When you make a copy of a document, you have an original copy. That first copy is called the first generation. Whether you make one copy or 1,000 copies, they are all first generation copies and they look exactly alike. Now, if you lose the original for some reason, you start making copies from the first generation, you now have a second generation copy. Now, if you lose the original and the first generation copy and start using second generation document to make copies, you're going to have a third generation copy. And it goes on and on and on from there. Let's say one day someone puts a check mark on your third generation copy, and then you start using that as your original. All documents going forward will have a check mark, and everyone will assume it's always been there. Let's say your child draws a ball on a fifth generation document, and you start using that as an original. All documents going forward will have that check mark and a ball, and people in future documents will assume that has always been there. Well, then the neighbor draws a picture of his dog on your fourth generation document, and you start using that as an original. All copies going forward will have dogs. I think you get the point. After a while, you can have multiple copies of the same original document looking different, feeling different. A big issue with the analog copiers was the further you got away from the original document, the weaker the new copies became. The image became fuzzy, lines were not clean, it became a compromised image. Now let's translate that to the church world. Christians are disciples of Jesus, who are called to make more disciples of Jesus. A disciple is basically a copy of Jesus. We try to live like him, try to talk like him, look like him, act like him, and in turn, we're to make more disciples, more copies who live like him, talk like him, act like him, who will make more disciples, who will make more disciples, and so on and so forth until Jesus comes back. There are lots of generations of copies of Jesus out there. The problem is, over the years, we've made so many additions and subtractions from what the original disciples look like that sometimes it is difficult to know what exactly are we supposed to look like and act like as disciples of Jesus. So in this series, we're going to look back and look at the first generation disciples, the very first believers who were taught by the original disciples. And we're going to learn how to be first generation disciples. We're going to try to cut through all the centuries of additions and subtractions. The goal will be to remove the things that were never intended to be there and to add back in things Jesus clearly wants in our lives. Our text for the series is Acts 2:41 through 47. For those who accepted his message were baptized, and that day about 3,000 people were added to them. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and signs were being performed through the apostles. Now all the believers were together and held all things in common. They sold their possessions and property and distributed the proceeds to all as they had need. Every day they devoted themselves to the meeting together in the temple and broke bread from house to house. They ate their food with joyful and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. Every day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved.